All right, go live.
I see stream is live button on my screen.
There we go. I'm living.
You are definitely living. And you look good,
Okay.
by the way.
Hey, I
And
look I look like I belong.
you look good. You look good.
Hey, welcome to the Power of You. And I'm one of the you. There's the other you on my other side there. I'm
The
Blaine
other
Bartlett.
you. So we'll flip it this week. So that's Blaine Bartlett.
And that's
And,
Dolan.
and I'm Dolan.
And that's Dolan over there.
He's over there. I'm over here. So yeah, that's Blaine Bartlett. He is a distinguished speaker.
And you are seasoned.
Something like that. You're well seasoned.
Well seasoned. Yeah, between us, we've got almost 100 years worth of stuff.
Oh,
we're not going to talk about what kind of stuff, but we got about 100 years worth of stuff here that we're going to be sharing with you.
Oh, mother of pearl! I think we've done so many of these back to back, weekly now. It's like they're getting even more irreverent as we get along. So,
well, I mean, if you're skating on thin ice, you may as well dance. So, we're usually on thin ice.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah.
But Power of You, we're going to be looking at decisions again. Yeah, we got a whole series on decisions that we're doing here. Leaders lead decisions.
That's right. Leaders do lead decisions. And we picked this is a topic that we're every week we're picking one piece of the topic that we're talking about as we move this forward through the whole thing we've talked about for the sake of what. And we'll kind of get into it when we get into the slides and kind of walk down through some kind of bumper rails that keep us focused on what we're doing here.
Some bumper rails. So The Power of You with Blaine Bartlett and Dolan White. Or hey, we did this alphabetically in terms of the billing. So
yeah, very much so. And obviously the senior billing started with a B, but we won't get into the no details.
No details. So we're looking at decisions here, as Dolan said. Leaders lead decisions, and we got some bullet lists here about why you want to pay attention to this as a leader.
Yeah, it's funny because as each week these bullets change kind of based on where we are in the decision process. And this week, as we were thinking about it, when you're leading decisions, we're going to get into kind of the meat and potatoes of this as a leader. Decisions and things that you contemplate and things that can prevent you from making decisions or things you need to take into consideration, like operational disruptions. What happens when I make this decision and Blaine and I tend to spend a lot of time, just for sake of quick conversation, in mindset, spirit, kind of that layer of the company. So this isn't really about, the top 3 tiers we'll show the model here in a bit, but it's really about the operational disruptions, and that's people, right? What happens with people and their mindset that disrupts them? What happens, because you're going to make a change. Decisions require a change. Something is changing or moving. And then a long-term financial impact. We'll get kind of a little bit about that. But the financial impact is companies are moving towards an outcome. And generally, as a leader, you're leading a decision that gets to an outcome. Outcomes generally are referred to in top line revenue, bottom line revenue. So you're contemplating that decision, but there's implications with that happen in your team, not just the money part.
And that's where the productivity piece comes in.
Yeah, right there.
Yep. Because, top line, bottom line, and in between, you got people that are executing or not.
Yes.
And that's a function of the quality of the decision. And by quality, and we're going to unbundle that a little bit here. What do we mean by quality decision? Your decision determines your future.
Yeah.
And that is, it's huge. Yeah. Kind of how that all plays out. You don't just, ready, aim, fire. That's not how most people make decisions. Most people make decisions, ready, fire. Oh, we should have aimed first. There's some things we didn't think about.
Yes.
So,
I've had a guy that used to work for me, Blaine, that was a Navy SEAL, and I was always remind him, don't swim ashore and call me after you've killed everybody to ask who was supposed to die. Don't do that. Which is, to be irreverent a little bit. But the next one that I was thinking about this week was the customer experience and retention. When we lose track, I think, as leaders about the word customer, because the customer in this particular case does not necessarily mean those people out there.
Exactly.
Customers are in here.
Yep.
What's that experience, and what's their retention? What's their focus? What's their mindset focus? Are we creating a frustrating event or a decision that's going to cause people to break away or leave a company, or right? So what's happening from a customer experience perspective?
And that's where this whole idea of compassionate capitalism, what you see over my shoulder here, this book, I mean,
Right.
yeah, it has to do with the nature of connection. And so customer, take that word and just explode it. I mean, not to get rid of it, but to explode who you think your customer are.
Hang on, shameless
Customers
plug.
are. There you go. That's the one.
All right. There we go.
Yeah, decisions have ripples. Decisions have all kinds of ripples beyond just the first 2 or 3 stakeholders that are invested and involved. It impacts everything. So we're going to look at that. Regulatory and compliance risk. There's always some stuff that's going on here. How do you mitigate risk? And
Yeah. Yes.
So-
That'll be a whole nother series. We'll talk about risk.
Well, that is a whole nother series. Yeah. What is risk?
Oh boy.
Yeah. Let me blow that horn.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's kind of part. And I found this phrase of, and we'll talk as we kind of head into this. And I was thinking about this just as I was contemplating it, Blaine, which is beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship. And little expenses, this isn't a money thing.
Yeah.
This isn't a money thing. It's the things that you contemplated that's an expense to the team, expense to mindset, expense to, because every decision carries an expense along with it.
Mhm.
And I love this quote from Ben Franklin's one I've used for many, many years. Beware of little expenses. Be careful with that.
And we've talked about this on the last 2 decision program or episodes. What do we call these things? These are episodes. Episodes.
I think episodes.
That, when we're talking about decisions, particularly from a leadership perspective, we're not talking about the big CapEx expenses. We're going to drop $1.5 million on this or
Right.
whatever. These are that certainly comes into play, but we're really looking here at the day-to-day, moment to moment, team by team, conversation by conversation, decisions that get made, walking, from point A to point B.
Right.
And well, let's do this. Okay. What was the decision what's the consequence?
Right.
Those little ones, little by little, a lot, little becomes a lot, small leaks, big ships go down because these things are not aligned. And that's what we're looking at here. How do you align the decisions that people are making in your organization? And it starts with you as a leader having a full understanding, a fulsome understanding of what it takes to make a high quality decision. People don't recognize that there is a skill involved in making high quality decisions.
There is. Yeah.
And when we're looking at skill development here, and this is more of a leadership development conversation, we put this in here because Dolan and I both, all the work that we do with our clients, both individually and collectively, we use these 2 models almost exclusively. Now we got a lot of other stuff that we tap in because we're trained highly compensated consultants, but these are the 2 foundational models that we work with. The leadership universe model, just 2 bars on that rather than 8 bars. Why, what, and how are vision, strategy, and tactics, and that's where most people focus.
Yeah.
That's not where the juice is. Your juice from a leadership perspective is when you learn how to actually work with mindset in a way that taps into and keeps you connected to the spirit and the soul that actually brings life to what it is that you're doing. It does no longer becomes something that somebody has to comply with. It's now something that's got juice to it. It's got something that's effervescent, and people go, "Ooh, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. Put me in, coach. Put me in, coach." That happens when you work mindset effectively. And that is what we're looking at when we're starting to play with some of this stuff. The 4 pillars model is foundational to all of this. And this is your baby.
The 4 pillars. It's funny because when we talk about kind of that, the how, what, why, mindset, spirit, and soul, and particularly leaders focusing on those 2 lower rungs, right? The mindset and spirit and soul. Not that they're lower; they're actually extremely important from a foundational perspective. The rest of it you'll figure out. There's a bunch of ways to get through that. But the 4 pillars focus on what do you do with it? So what are the components of mindset, spirit, and soul? And when we're in that, and we'll, without getting into to do 4 bars as well, it is trust and autonomy is the very first pillar. How do I create reciprocal trust? Trust myself and you trust me. Autonomy is the willingness for people to try. And communication and transparency. How do I communicate and how do I do it in a transparent manner? Growth and innovation is that ability to grow my company and for people to innovate, to be, it's Kaizen. How do I get better? How do I try new things? The what if we try this model, innovate. And then systems of accountability isn't things like a Trello board or Monday.com, or those things are important from a measures perspective, but a system of accountability is that it lies predominantly in spirit and soul. That system of accountability is that piece where we make a commitment together to move towards a worthy ideal, which we'll talk about. And that is that system of accountability. We make that commitment. The measures are important so that we know we're progressing, but that accountability is what gives that linchpin there. And that's the 2 reference models that we lean in for all things that we do with consulting and coaching with our clients.
Yeah. And it informs, also in part, I mean, when we're specifically, I'll take that mindset area here, the mindset that people have around decisions and decision making is usually not examined well. And in my experience, most people do not know themselves well. And part of that has to do with what compels them to make the decisions that they make.
Right.
And that, we would like to think we're in front of that. Not a chance in hell. We're not in front of that. There's something else that's driving it. There really is. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at the consequence of decision making, and a large part of it has to do, from a leadership perspective, with how you influence others. Yeah, and ultimately that ends up, informing the co-creation aspect of leadership, the coordinated movement of leadership, and Dolan mentioned the pursuit of a worthy ideal. This is our definition. You won't find this in Webster or Oxford, but this is an operational definition of leadership. Activity. It's an activity. Leaders cause movement of influencing others, and it's usually by decisions. Influencing others in order to co-create ownership transfers, coordinated movement. We're going into unknown territory. We're going to step on each other's toes. How do we coordinate this thing in pursuit of something that's meaningful? Not something that is arbitrarily just dropped on me. A quarterly goal is not meaningful except to your CFO and your board. The pursuit of a worthy ideal. Is this objective that we're saying we're wanting, is it worthy of who I am? Does it inspire me, not motivate me? Inspiration's inside, motivation is outside. Does this inspire me? Does it bring the best of me out? That's what we're looking for with leaders doing the work that leaders need to do today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this sentence, so you, as those who are watching this or come back to this, there's a, as a leader, when you're thinking about your activities today, what am I doing today? Right. Because there's an action involved in it. And you take the 5 pieces that are embedded inside of one sentence. Am I influencing others? Am I influencing, or am I in command and control? Am I co-creating? Are we doing this together? Am I asking the questions that elicit co-creation? And coordinated movement means, are we on the same path? Are we in the same place? Are we doing this together? And in pursuit of the worthy ideal. I love that. We'll get into that more for the sake of what, but that worthy ideal is not, a lot of times when you're inside of an organization and the CEO, CFO proclaims, we're going to increase revenue by 8%. That's not a worthy ideal. That's a thing.
Yeah. I love that colloquial distinction. It's a thing. It's not a worthy ideal.
Yeah, it's a thing.
It's a thing. Yeah. People don't get excited about things.
No. I had an interview this week on my podcast with a gentleman from Alabama. So I'm still recovering.
Kindred spirits.
Having originally been from Alabama, I speak their language fluently. I'm coming back. So it's a thing. So there you go. Not a thing. Thing.
All right. So
there you go.
This notion of for the sake of what, we talk about this, this is the worthy ideal piece.
Yeah.
And it's not your vision, your goals, or your objectives. The vision, strategy, tactics. Yeah, for the sake of what? That's not what that is. It's the answer to what matters. What matters here? And this is important because this is where high quality decisions originate, is when people are clear about what matters, what really matters here. I was watching last night Everest, semi documentary about
Yes.
this New Zealand team that 1996. It was just a catastrophe. A bunch of people died, and
Yeah.
there was one little vignette there where they had a point where they were summiting on Everest, and they had to be coming back off at 2 o'clock. They had this pretty precisely laid out. We have to start coming down at 2 o'clock, because anybody that does any mountaineering knows it's far more dangerous coming back off the mountain
Yes.
than it is going up, because you're tired, you're exhausted, and particularly at that altitude, oxygen deprivation, all kinds of stuff. So they're pretty hard fast about we have to be coming back down. Well, one of the climbers had been straggling, and he got to the point where everybody's coming back down, and he comes up to the expedition leader and says, "I'm so close, I can't." And this is his third attempt to come up. And he's just begging, "You've got to get me up there. We've got to get up there." And you can see the decision process that this expedition leader is going through. He's got a wife at home that's got their first baby on the way. So he's what matters starts to come into play here. And I never saw it this way before when I saw the movie originally. But he actually says, "Okay, fine. I'll take you. We'll go to the top." So they get up there. Clock is ticking and pictures are being taken. It's kind of like, are you guys crazy? There's a big storm coming in. What matters? Well, what mattered to him at that conversational point, that inflection point, was, I don't want to disappoint somebody's life dreams. Now, the other part of that is, I've got a new baby on the way. My wife is there. We miss this thing. That's a life and death decision. He opted for what matters. What matters was a social, and this is the point I want to make. What mattered there was social approval. Social approval. I don't want to disappoint. Now, this gets enmeshed in our mindset. This gets enmeshed in kind of how we see ourselves. I'm the kind of person who would not take away somebody's dream. I've lived with that a long time now. I've got a new baby coming along. I've never been a dad before. So this is a new thing that's coming in. It hasn't really taken root.
Right.
So what matters? Well, both of them end up dying. And he leaves his wife as a widow and his newborn daughter, or soon to be daughter, orphaned. They're not orphaned, but without a father. So this question of what matters isn't hypothetical, and it's not abstract. It requires a really deep look at what's really going on here in our organization. For me, this is why we call this the power of you. The power of you. That's what we're looking at. So this decision-making tree, we're flowing through this thing that, for the sake of what, anchors it all. It anchors it all. And then the last two that we've done here have been organized around, number 2 here, does this decision align with our mission and core values? Right. And number 3, does it contribute to our primary goal? So what matters? What matters? And today we're going to be looking at, and that's why I brought this thing about Everest up.
What's the cost?
What's the cost?
Yeah. That's interesting. Now I got to go back and watch that movie again. So that's it. That's really interesting. But yeah, it is really about the cost, as we talk about going down through this arc, and kind of leading into it. That's every decision there's a weight that comes along with it. And I love your explanation there about the movie, although that's a little visceral, though. I think to go, but it's important. Yeah, it is. And there are big decisions we make in organizations. There's big decisions that we make for our teams that, and one of the metaphors that you and I work with is decisions have a trunk impact. If the trunk of the tree is damaged, the tree's going to die, or at least take a big hit. Yes.
Those are big decisions. Then you've got branches, and then you've got twigs that come off those branches and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. As you start getting out, now the tree, the fulsomeness of the tree is populated by all kinds of tiny little decisions. Each one of them contribute to the health
Right.
of the tree.
Right.
For the sake of what are we making these decisions?
Yeah. Yeah. It is the leaf decisions. And we don't think that's yet another whole series about leaf decisions.
Oh yeah, we do. So
Yeah.
today,
So we're going to talk about people, time, and money, but we're going to talk about people, time, and money. Whatever. This is an old. So I'm old. I grew up in the software industry, and I would always tell my clients growing up, and I was blessed. I got to lead, with some amazing clients with Disney and all kinds of different clients and stuff. But we talk about there's three domains that, as part of the consideration, that we want to focus in, which is people, time, and money. That's really the three primary domains from a business perspective that are going to have an influence on the decision. And they're not distinctly separate, hence the circle in the middle. They all are connected. So that's that diagram. That's why that diagram lives here. People, time, and money. We're going to lean into that just a skosh.
There we go. So the people piece.
Yeah.
That was the segue cue, and I missed the button.
Oh, sorry. Segue cue. We need like a hand signal. What was it that like this? There was I forget who used to do. Yeah. Here's the segue cue. I used to tell my students when I was teaching, if you see me do that's my visual indication to you that I'm guessing. Whatever comes out of my mouth after that point.
Just pulling this out and seeing what happens.
Pulling on my ear. But when we're talking about people, right? Define your you with decisions, and a lot of that is this is the power of you. This whole series. Blaine and I have talked about the need to talk as leaders, not just to the people about the people you lead and the act of leading. It's about you. And these are some things to take away. And I would encourage grab the screen or go back and listen to this. But there's a series of things to contemplate. The first is, how is this decision going to impact morale? This mindset. How does it impact morale? And morale is a single player game. A lot of people talk about morale as the morale of the company. Morale, there's a law. Morale is single player. How does it impact engagement? How does it impact retention? Retention doesn't mean people quit. Retention means their willingness to participate.
Yeah. Emotional engagement.
Yeah. Are they going to, did you retain, did you lose them? And by the way, if you don't retain them, if they're not emotionally engaged, if there's not their own worthy ideal in it from the people perspective, you will lose them, and you're going to lose them over time. They're going to go find someplace else to play.
Yep.
And there's a cost associated with that. One of the questions, does it require additional training? And that's the willingness to invest in your team. It's not, are my people smart enough? But do we know what we need to know? And if so, what's our time and cost investment? Remember that we talked about that triangle, right? Because one of the things with the decision with people is and I had this conversation with a client this morning, when it was about, as you make a decision to do these things, it's not about stacking more upon each other. It is about what is that time and cost investment from the things that they're focused on. Because we just can't say, by the way, we're going to decide 5 new things, and now you're going to work a 12-hour day.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Not going to fly.
Which is the next bullet, right? Is it going to create workload imbalances or staff? Boy, I could stop talking. I could let you talk about a couple. I mean,
it's just, if it requires new staff, by definition, whenever you add or take away from any member of a team, the whole dynamic of the team shifts. Just know that that's true, because it's not going to function the way it did before.
Right.
Yeah. It either needs to accommodate a piece, or it needs to fill in a space that is no longer being filled. So all the dynamics, so collaboration, communication, team dynamics, they're all up in the air, which is where burnout, stress, and resistance come from, because everything is now disrupted. People are going, there's 2 operating questions that are always existing in people's minds. Who am I, and where do I belong? And when you're making a decision that, by definition causes a change, and every decision causes a change, these
Right.
two questions come into play. Who am I? Where do I belong? The problem with change isn't the change itself. It's the disruption to existing relationships that the change causes. And
Yeah.
every decision will in some way perturb an existing relationship. Guaranteed. And if you're not paying attention to that, you're going to have little by little leaks that begin to aggregate. And all of a sudden, you got a hold full of water and your boat is listing.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
So, this idea of approaching your decision with a mindset of co-creation and empowerment. Yeah. How does it support long-term engagement? So, think of this as a checklist. You're not going to go through this entire thing with every single decision you make around the people issue, but you want to begin training your mindset to pay attention, at least peripherally, to these sorts of issues. Now, we've got pretty granular with these bullet points.
Yeah.
And that's for a reason, because that granularity will begin to inform a larger meta picture. So you start thinking in patterns.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think one of the things, boy, it's been a great week so far. I just have great weeks. But one of the things that comes out of this that becomes readily apparent, I think, Blaine, is as you as a leader think of these things with your team, as you begin to know the people in your team on an intimate basis, you will know the answers to these questions. You want to verify them. So these begin to create a framework in your thinking about the team and structure of the individuals that you have, because you'll know them on an intimate basis. You know about their workload imbalances. You know about things in their personal life. You know about stress and burnout because you're doing right things with them, right? Which is you're having one-on-ones and conversations, and you're doing the kind of thing to create that cohesive, trust-based relationship, which is spirit and soul.
Yeah. It's interesting, just along that way of knowing your people well enough. Steve Jobs annually would convene a meeting of the top 100 people at Apple.
Mm-hmm.
These were not the executives. These were not the senior executives. They were the 100 people that were having the most direct impact on the company that year, or were being most directly impacted by decisions that were being made that year. Those are the people he wanted to actually engage.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that's just a fascinating approach. Take the ones and identify them. And leadership is a high contact game. You don't lead from an ivory tower. You don't lead from your office with the door closed.
No, it is a full contact sport. All right, time. So, good segue though. I didn't even pull on my ear. So time. How long will it take to implement the decision, and will it disrupt existing workflows? So one of the things, and the reason why this is one of my favorite bullets, is when you're in the decision-making process, the thing we talk about through this arc is when you're making decisions. That's why there's some gates and bumper rails to all this. When you are taking a lot of time and a long time, and you're having meetings and saying, well, let's go away and think about it, and let's go away. People, because of their mindset and because of the fact that we're all human, we lose track of our focus. So we just not only disrupt workflow, but we disrupt performance, we disrupt emotions, we create stress, because for the sake of what is no longer in alignment. What am I working towards, and why am I doing what I do? It's the question we ask every day at the end of our day: is what I did today of value?
Yep.
So when you are taking a long time to implement a decision, it will disrupt workflows. And workflows is a simple word to say all of that stuff. And then from that, what happens? What bottlenecks are displaced? And by the way, most bottlenecks, which could be called constraints, most bottlenecks aren't those people.
Right.
They're you.
Yep.
You're the constraint and the bottleneck because you can't get to a decision. So you become a constraint and a bottleneck. And then there's the there's this almost a tactical question, but it's how much time is required for onboarding adjustments and troubleshooting. When you're making it, it's a question you have to ask, because there's a lot of times I think leaders, we tend to think plain about, I'm going to make a decision, I'm going to stack 4 people on the project, and this is going to go, and it's going to be wonderful. We're going to go, or we're the ideal, we're going to get all the way out there. And we discover that when we bring new people in as under the people domain, productivity goes, because everybody's got to figure out, how do I fit? Who am I working with? What are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a system in place to measure the adjustments, and to be able to very pragmatically understand what's going on in the body of the team and move them forward in a positive way, which I call troubleshooting, for simplicity's sake, to move them forward in a positive way, so that cliff drop is a gentle curve.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It's part of it.
Oh, it will. I mean,
you can't throw people in and get better.
This is part of the whole forming, storming, norming cycle. Forming, storming,
Exactly.
norming. Every time there's a new decision that requires a recalibration, forming, storming, norming. You want to get through forming, storming, norming so you can get to excelling. Forming, storming, norming, excelling.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a cycle. And it's always going to be present. I don't care how seasoned your team is. There is a time investment involved with it. And that is really important to understand, because it will require, in that forming, storming, norming phase, meetings, planning, some approvals that you may not know needed to be given up or solicited in order to keep things going.
Yeah. And the fun part of that is you've experienced it in my career by implementing systems inside of large organizations, is when you get to that point and you bring people into the room who don't know each other, don't trust each other, have their own initiatives in place, because the body of that decision is going to equate back to people. So you're going to have to make that commitment for the meetings and plannings and approval, and those things can slow down the execution as you bolt it together. Anyway, go ahead. I will.
And does it align? This is a key question here. Does it align with our current priorities, or is it going to divert our focus, from other initiatives that we've got going? If it's going to divert our focus, and it does align with current priorities, and it's possible that will happen, how are you going to mitigate that?
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of like, okay, what's getting moved around on the plate? Yeah. That sort of stuff comes into play here. So this is where you start thinking strategically. This is an investment in time. So I'm going to be pulling this one back for a short period of time here, because it ensures that something else is going to happen here. So you're actually being very proactive in terms of using the levers of decision making to facilitate continual movement, so that you have efficiency and productivity. You're looking always to mitigate anything that will compromise efficiency. And you don't want to be Doge in the process.
Be careful. Yeah.
There's anything but efficiency occurring there, regardless of what the name of that department actually indicates it could be doing. It is not about efficiency. So that's another, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Never mind.
All right. Cool.
Okay. So that brings us back to, how much is this thing going to cost?
Yeah. This is the conversation around this, what's the upfront, hidden, or ongoing costs associated with the decision? So remember, we're talking about people and time, and the people dynamic. And we talked to Blaine originally about the definition of leadership. Right? Co-create, in particular, co-creating coordinated movement. In that phase of that sentence comes the opportunity to discover with the people involved in the decision things you don't know.
Yep.
What's hidden from my view? Because I can't know it all. I just can't. There's no way to know that. I had a great conversation yesterday with a gentleman named Tom Kraus, Dr. Thomas Kraus, and his company does cool stuff. But one of the things that they did leadership. They do leadership analysis based on catastrophic events. And one of the things he talked about in our conversation was around the Challenger explosion. When the Challenger exploded at NASA, and he led the team that did the leadership thing. And it is that the way the meetings went is there was an inner circle of people who were the high level ranking admirals, generals, blah, 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 blah. Then there was an outer circle and then an outer circle. And the outer circle people never got to speak up. And they were the ones that knew that the O-ring was a problem. The inner circle people don't know that. So one of the things they added into the conversation was, is there anything anybody would like to add to the conversation? Mm-hmm. So it is that moment in time where there's stuff you're not going to know. You gotta find out, because it will impact time and people.
Yeah. And this also opens up the door of reconciling competing for the sakes of what?
Yes.
Because if you're in that inner circle, you've got a different set of priorities that you're paying attention to. Yeah. Some of it may be public facing. So think of that leader on the expedition leader. What will people think if I don't, or if I do, or if we don't launch on time? That's where it's outer circle. We've got a much more granular view here that this O-ring is compromised when it gets frozen. For the sake of what? Okay. How does that information get communicated? That has a cost to it. It definitely does. But that's an investment. You can shift that cost mentality to an investment mentality when you start reconciling the for the sake of what.
Yes. Yeah. And I think some of these we can go through. We can kind of go through pretty quick. Is it going to require new tool systems? Those are obviously the people that are in that outer circle, in that ring, as you talked about, and you begin to discover those kinds of things, which is we can if our system, we can if our consultants were trained, we can if, and there's reasons why, from a money perspective and people and time, you may say, hey, let's use consultants to do this, because it becomes more elastic, right? It gets us quicker to why people hire us. It helps them get quicker to a decision so that they can move their business forward in a different manner. What's our risk? Again, we could spend some time talking about how's this going to affect revenue, profitability, our return on investment, short-term, long-term. What's the impact? The money piece of the conversation, the reason why this is important is that is money. We are an interesting species. Money carries a lot of emotion with it.
Yes.
And the way we talk and think about money, if we're not congruent with the definition of the purpose of money and what's the intention behind it, money can carry a lot of emotion behind it, which impacts people, which impacts time. Hence the circle. Everything connects together. And the last is this decision long-term? Am I thinking with a growth-oriented mindset that balances my investment, right? I'm moving towards efficiency, short-term costs with a sustainable financial income. Financial impact. Income's one thing, but impact is another.
Yeah.
Impact, not income.
Yeah.
So
that long-term growth mindset. I mean, when there's perturbation in the market, when something happens, a black swan event. We've talked about this before. You had black swan events as well. But this idea of investing for the long term rather than cost cutting in the short term, how do you balance that conundrum? Oftentimes it is a conundrum. Right. So, you might, this decision may be, absolutely spot on for reducing costs, but it's going to compromise and really hamper what we're trying to do long term. For the sake of what? Immediate survival or long term thriving? Your choice.
Yeah.
And it's on a continuum. Yeah. It's not an either or. How do you balance that?
That is the art.
That is the art. And that's why there's a skill involved in decision making. These are not unilateral moves. These require consultation and collaboration on the part of you and your leadership team.
Yes.
To actually work this out. So this is, we're talking to you directly as a leader, but this is applicable to how you teach your team how to make high quality decisions.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a very important point that I think, Blaine, one of the things that take away from this. These are all things, these are all about you, but you are on the hook to create in your systems of accountability a common way that you're making decisions together. And don't do all the stuff we tell you to go do, by the way. Do the things that are right for you to go do, please, goodness gracious. But do the things that are right for you. Use these structures and these constructs to help you through the process. But by creating that, and thank you for saying that so much, Blaine, because by creating that consistency and continuity inside of your organization, people begin to understand how decisions are made, why they are made, and they can get behind, they understand them.
That's where buy-in happens.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And that's that invisible domain where everybody in the room shakes their head and says, oh yeah, I'm in. And then in the hall, they all go, yeah, that was bullshit.
So
here we go.
If you're not paying attention to this, there are some consequences, and this is kind of small type, but small type. I feel squint. I'm going to put my glasses on here. There's a decrease in employee engagement. I mean, I'll just kind of hit the top notes here.
Yeah.
Delay and missed deadlines. Yeah. Yep. If you can afford to do it over, you can afford to do it right the first time.
I love that statement. Exactly.
Good Lord.
You can pay me twice or pay me once.
You can pay me twice or yeah. Which leads right to number 3 here: financial waste and reduced profitability. Yeah. When you're doing this effectively, and take the word right and wrong out of it, but is this working or not working for us? You begin to shorten cycle times.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea of, this is where trust comes into play here. Trust affects quality, it affects speed, and it affects money. And you have high levels of trust in your organization. You go faster, it costs you less, and you've got people engaged.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last piece here is strategic misalignment and a loss of business focus, and even ultimately a business loss. So these are the 4 consequences if you're not paying attention to this well. And what we've given you up to now is three domains. Kind of think of them as a checklist. You're not going to hit every box on these things that we've identified, because you could tweak and tune them. You could add some more if you wanted to, and you could take some away if you wanted to, and still have a pretty robust list to work with. What we want you to walk away from this, though, with is that it's a discipline. Making decisions is a disciplined process that you need to learn how to do as a high quality, high performing leader. That's what we're looking to kind of drop into play here. So big fire hose coming at you today. We talk a lot about this stuff. So kind of, where do you go from here? We'll just briefly talk about this, because we do have a way that we can actually expand this so it doesn't feel like you're just getting inundated, that it becomes more bite-sized. And the whole idea here is you need to move in order for things to be different. Standing still does not work. So nothing happens until something moves. And what we also know from work that we've done with clients, and also what research shows, is that only about 20 to 30% of participants in personal and professional development programs actually follow through with action plans. You actually need something that gives you an ability to have regular check-ins or peer groups that can support you in doing changes that you're trying to develop. And this is particularly true when you're trying to develop new skills, because there's a discipline involved with it that takes time. So what we're going to suggest to you is that you join us in a leadership transformation challenge. It's a 5-day transformation challenge, begins actually Monday, March 24th, next Monday. It's free, and it runs for 5 days. Starts at 9 a.m. Pacific time, and you're more than welcome. Like I say here, join us. You'll be glad you did. And I mean that very specifically. We'd love to have you there. We're going to be spending a lot of time, 5 days, about an hour a day, going into detail on various aspects of leadership, including this decision-making conversation that we're doing a deeper dive on in these Thursday sessions. So there's the URL. You can scan the QR code that's up in the upper right-hand side there, and it will take you to a landing page that you can just register. Like I said, it's a free challenge. Love to have you join us. You'll see a VIP option there. If it intrigues you, feel free. It's nominal cost for a VIP option. You'll get access to Dolan and I personally each day.
Yep.
And yeah, so we're just adding a couple of bells and whistles in there just to kind of keep things warm and fuzzy and fun.
Simple. It's two master sales guys. I like. It's like, yep, come on. And if you don't, that's okay too.
That's okay too. Yeah.
Right.
Consider it a Pheno invitation to join us. Feel invited, not obligated. Feel invited, not obligated. We'd love to see you there.
Perfect.
So, buddy, had a great time today. This is good stuff.
Good conversation. Good conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for those who are watching this. I've been getting some notes from folks. Love it. Stay with us. There's a lot of things that we'll be talking about, and come join us in the Transformation Challenge. And Mr. Bartlett, I will wish you a good afternoon.
Absolutely. You the same. Have a great weekend. This anniversary or this weekend is your anniversary weekend. 38
years.
Yes, 38 years. Congratulations. Enjoy the Silver Oak.
I'm sorry, 38 years.
38 years. Yes.
Yeah.
Be nice. Be nice.
There you go.
Okay.
All right.
And folks, we'll see you next Thursday. And those of you that are interested, please do join us Monday morning, 9 a.m. through Friday morning at 9 a.m. Leadership Transformation Challenge. It's a working challenge. You're going to walk away with a boatload of stuff.
Yeah.
Boatload of stuff. Absolutely. There will be a lot of things in there that you can immediately translate and transform your organization with.
Very true.
See you next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.